Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Postgame Live, presented by my bookie. Bet anything, anytime, from anywhere, only with my bookie. Well, 13 proved to be an unlucky number for the Eagles, who for the first time in 13 historical games against the Jets franchise, they lost. A 20-14 defeat filled with turnovers, including an interception late by Jalen Hurts in the final 2 minutes that set up the go-ahead touchdown for the Jets. It was a very ugly game, and for many Eagles fans, it might be a reminder of the Eagles' first loss last year against Washington, with 4 turnovers in that game as well. A lot of injuries, a lot of things that we're going to have to get through. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan, and of course, joined with us all season long on the post-game show is former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. Fellas, this is the first time. I even texted Adam. He can verify this. First time where in the third quarter, when things weren't going well, even with the Eagles ahead, I said, you know what? Feels like this thing is slipping away. Like the Eagles could really lose this game, and sure enough, they did. So let's start with just our big picture outlook on this. Adam, I will begin with you. I mean, it was an ugly game, and obviously injuries played a part, but your takeaway.
It was sloppy, very sloppy. When you lose a turnover battle, historically, you lose 80% of your games. I never saw them being a -4 in this game with Zach Wilson on the other side who would play with it like a chicken with his head cut off. He was just running around. In fact, what we talked about in the pregame was exactly what Zach Wilson looked like today. He would just run around, didn't know where he's going with the football, was not calm, playing with those 5 cups of Starbucks. So that was not the problem. The problem was their offense. Eagles' offense really struggled. They were not comfortable. Hurts turned the ball over uncharacteristically, which is not like him. The last pick was terrible. Threw off his back foot. It was just a slop fest. A defense hung in there, as you said, with the injuries. But overall, the takeaway is very, very sloppy, and particularly in offense where we could say all we want about how good the Jets' defense is, but a lot of self-inflicted wounds today.
Play. There's that proverbial adage, right? If you let a team at home hang around and you play ugly enough, you'll get haunted in the end by it. Is that kind of what it felt like today?
Absolutely. The longer they play with you, the more confidence they gain. And this defense is already a confident defense. This defense has that swagger about them. They know they're good. They play like they know they're good. This defense can score points like you saw in the end of the game right there. They literally won the game. They slammed the door and took it. But I'm not a guy to make excuses. I really don't want to sound like, I'm trying to make excuses here, but unfortunately, like when you got that many injuries, it's really hard. It's extremely hard to play. The guys that are backing these guys up aren't getting the reps in practice. They're not the same caliber. It's such a close-knit league as far as competitiveness is. When you lose these big-time players, it matters. It's not the same team. It wasn't the same team today that we've seen. Obviously, they could have won. They should have done a better job of not committing these turnovers, of not playing such sloppy football. But that's difficult when you lose an all-pro right tackle. You don't have your stud rookie defensive tackle. You lose your cornerback. You lose your safety. I mean, it's tough to play. It's not the typical Eagles team we usually see. Don't want to make excuses. They still should have pulled it out, but it's tough to win in the NFL when you are missing a lot of your go-to guys.
Yeah, you know what, Clay, to your point, Adam and I say this all the time, and we're not being facetious when we say it. The Eagles have great players. Jalen Hurts had an MVP-like season. A.J. Brown, Pro Bowl-like season, All-Pro. But their MVP is Lane Johnson for what he's able to do. And you can see a difference in the complexion of the offense as soon as Lane Johnson went out, because the drop-off, even with all those injuries in the secondary, the drop-off from Lane Johnson to Jack Driscoll proved to me to be the biggest difference, because the Jets' pass rush was able to come alive. And I think he just shows it every time and again how important he is to this team.
Yeah, Jermaine Johnson. I know he's not credited with a sack, but he had plenty of pressures. He beat Driscoll. Driscoll struggled today. You saw the sack that Bryce Huff had late on Driscoll. It was tough. And it wasn't like they were really max protecting at all to help them. It just, you give too much pressure. Mailata gave up at least one. We saw on the other side. It was just not pretty. They didn't score a point in the second half, which is troubling. Still, though, as Clay said, they have a chance to win the game. Hurts can't make that pick. He knows better. That was pretty bad. Swift had the fumble, though Swift certainly looked good. There are some positives, though, which we'll get to as the show progresses. But this is a game they're going to look back and say, how the heck did we lose this game?
Yeah.
Well,
it
Adam,
really
to that
shows
point,
you-
also,
yeah.
this might be. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it's like you're saying.
I was just going to say. Go ahead, Clay.
No, I was gonna say it's the fact that it just shows you how important Lane Johnson really is to this team. I mean, like having a lockdown right tackle when you're going against a stud defensive line, you don't even have to think about that player with Lane Johnson out there. You just take him out. Lane Johnson is locking down that edge. Hurts can play so much more confidently, knowing there's going to be nobody coming off of that edge. He's fine. It's a completely different game. People think maybe this offensive line, one offensive lineman isn't that big. It's a huge deal. And you can see it in the way Hurts is playing, the amount of comfortability he has in the pocket when Lane Johnson's in, when Lane Johnson's out. So that's all. I just wanted to just piggyback off of Adam saying, yeah, like that is such a huge loss.
Yes. Yeah. And to piggyback also from Adam's point on a blown opportunity, right? And what could have been, the Eagles could, had they won this game, have been standing alone in the race for top seed in the NFC East at in the NFC at 6-0. Instead, they lose just like the Niners do. And Detroit wins. And now you've sort of got this three-way horse race. Now we're early. But if you're ever going to look back and say one game could have made the difference, you're going to think about the time you turned the ball over 4 times on the road against a team that was as beat up as you were and also losing players in the middle of the game. So certainly that will maybe factor in by the end of the year. It stings now. We'll get through everything. There were some positives. We'll talk about that. We'll get into some personnel that we saw. We'll just go right through from Eagles offense to defense to special teams as we go through this show. I want to remind everybody about my bookie. When your money is on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you the tools to win, like my bookie. At my bookie, it does not matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use my bookie for daily odds boosts, same game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Plus, my bookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Just use the promo code THEBIRDS on your first deposit and receive up to $200 in cash. That's one word, The Birds, to claim your own cash bonus now. Try the MyBookie money bag to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds. Guys, listen to this. Plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You will not find those odds anywhere else like that. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. All right, let's talk about the Eagles offense, because and beside the fact that when Lane Johnson left, they had a backup right guard and a backup right tackle in with Sua Opeta and Jack Driscoll. The Birds were moving the ball. That to me wasn't the issue, especially in the first half, even through 3 quarters. It was holding on to the ball, and you saw some really uncharacteristic turnovers. In fact, I don't think Jalen Hurts was at fault for the first interception, right? The ball kind of gets jarred out of he wasn't really at fault for any of the turnovers until the last one, which will prove to be the key one. So Adam, the history of the Eagles is they don't turn the ball over like this. The recent history, they had 5 going into the game, right? So 5 in 5 weeks, and they have 4 today. So part of us can look at this and say, they probably had their one stinker. You would hope to think that they had their one sticker of the year.
Yeah. I mean, look, the last pick clearly wasn't Hurts, but the other ones, it's fair. Certainly, Goddard one was not on him. I mean, Goddard, he just has it jarred out of his hands.
Just get it to Williams right there, man.
Yeah. So, but their timing was kind of off. They did hit some big plays, no doubt, but they also missed on some big plays where I don't think the timing was great. This is going to be one of those where you go, wow, how did they lose? I mean, this is a team that cannot move the offense. By the way, the defense was terrific. The offense put them in a tough spot with the turnovers. Milton Williams is great today. All over the place. What an underrated player he is. Sweaty had 3 quarterback hits. Reddick was back once again. He was awesome. Max Mitchell, number 61, the right tackle for the Jets. Poor guy. Reddick was lined up over him quite a bit. And as we talked about in the pregame show, we were hearing Morrow would start. He did, but Jeff, I think you brought this up. they might wind up having a rotation, and they did. We don't know what the snap count was between Morrow and Dean, but they both seem to play that Mike position.
Yeah, they both did, which is difficult, right? And we'll get into that on the defensive side, because they both probably had to wear the helmet with the green dot, which means you got a lot of stuff, moving parts going on there. One thing that stuck out to me, Clay, what we talked about at Inside the Birds pregame live with Greg Cosell and Jason Avant, is last week you had an all-pro, all-time transformational defensive tackle force in Aaron Donald, that it was an all-hands-on-deck approach, but you necessarily couldn't take that against the Jets because they're a much more well-rounded defensive front. You saw DeAndre Swift. He had 18 yards rushing on 10 carries, and that includes a 9-yard rush. So that means on the other 9 carries, he got 9 yards. There's usually a pretty good marriage between the Hurts run and the running back run game. Hurts had his yards, but the running backs could not make hay today.
Yeah, obviously, Quentin Williams, Quentin Jefferson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, that front four they got over there, and Bryce Huff getting in there, Carl Lawson. I mean, they got guys. They got some dogs up there, and a lot of them aren't well-known guys, but they just know how to play the game. They're guys who know how to hold down their gaps. They can two-gap. They know the rules of this defense really well. And then Robert Saleh is a guy that typically doesn't get the ball ran on him. I love Robert Saleh. He was a coach. I played with him when he was in Jacksonville, and I was a tight end, and he was the coach, right? And he used to always come to me, Clay, I love the way you play the game, because I was always the guy that would block a little bit extra, get in a fight with the dude in practice. It's like, man, I love how you play that game. That's how I wish all our players play. He's that hard-nosed guys. He is coaching the guys like that. He loves that physical, pound them out game of football, and that's the guys that he has on his defense, the guys that give that little extra shove. Give the extra effort, know how to stop the run, and will be in your face on all accounts of the game. And that's who he has in his defense. I think it all starts with Robert Saleh, who's a great defensive coach. I mean, even in Jacksonville, when we're struggling, I remember, the linebackers and people in defense saying, Saleh's going to be a good coach. It's just something and it's just the fact that he makes players play better. He brings out the most of them in defense. Defensively, he's a wizard, and he does a great job of calling defense. So hats off to Saleh and everything that he's been able to do with the Jets defense there.
Yeah, Adam, those linebackers are really, we talked about that in the pregame show. Quincy Williams and the other kid, they run around and fly around the ball, and they were tough because they can do a little bit of everything. They can run, they can blitz, they can cover. So you saw all that, and that sort of threw the Eagles offense a little bit off balance at times. And to me, their ability to be quick, to play fast, and especially get it into their drops, right? You saw Jalen Hurts want to throw the ball to the running back, which is something we've advocated for, right? Going back to the offseason. And that was the positive, that he was really taking the underneath, and DeAndre Swift was getting something in the receiving game that he wasn't getting in the rushing game.
Oh man, when Swift was, I know he had the fumble, but he was dynamic. He scored in the pass game. This is what I talked about in the pregame. If you want to do better in the red zone, get Swift the football in the pass game. They were able to score in there. I know Hurts barely scored. That was interesting. At least you could say the red zone offense was better, so that's a positive. But there's no question with Opeta at right guard and then Driscoll at right tackle, it was a problem. There's no doubt about it. It was a problem. They gave up pressures, some self-inflicted wounds. It's going to be a problem as we go along here. We don't know the severity of Johnson's ankle. Unfortunately, couldn't come back in. So we'll find out tomorrow about how bad it is. But they've got some problems now, Jeff, with injuries on both sides of football. Their depth is being tested in a major way, and it's not one particular position. That's the thing. It's right. Like all over the place right now.
Yeah, here's one guy that I think we have to single out, and not for good reasons, and surprising. I'm very surprised to say this, Clay, but Devontae Smith was a letdown player in this game.
2 big drops, man. Yeah.
2 huge drops, one wide open one. And then at the end, I caught one, when they were trying to, when the Eagles were trying to move the ball at the end and sort of run the clock out before the interception, he kind of gave the inside lane to, I think it was Bryce Huff or somebody, to tackle DeAndre Swift behind the line of scrimmage, or maybe it was Gainwell. Either way, he just, for a guy who seems to do everything well, I thought he had an all-around poor game.
No, you're not wrong, man. And obviously we haven't seen the all-22 yet, but these are some obvious plays. On the sideline there, that was Gainwell on the sideline, but the one awful drop by Devontae Smith, man. He had 2 of them, and just the way he didn't seem like he's playing in the run game like he usually does. And one of the things I love about these receivers and the Eagles is they all take pride in the run game, man. They're a team that, well, in the run game, they're blocking downfield. A.J. Brown, 125 yards in 4 straight games. But you look at him in the run game, he's blocking downfield, blocking hard. You don't see that a lot. They're paying him to make these plays. Okay, and the fact that he does that really sets him apart. And Devontae usually does that too, but you didn't see that today. I want to watch all 22 and see what happened there, but I think it's the physicality of this Jets team. Even when they're missing their stud cornerbacks, kind of got to the Eagles on the offense a little bit.
Hard to believe. Hard to believe that they could not. I mean, yes, you're right, Clay. A.J. Brown was incredible. He's over 550 yards in his last 4 games. But how they only put up 14 points against a team that's playing, they're down 3 out of their top 4 outside corners, is beyond me. It's hard to understand. Yeah, sure, pass protection at times was not great, but they had plays, and we just talked about Devontae Smith wide open over the middle, totally not like him, by the way, with no one on him.
Right.
He's got great hands. He's always great. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah. I mean, it's you look at the stats and you say, holy cow, the Eagles were actually better in the red zone, right? They scored touchdowns on their first 2 trips. So they seemingly corrected that. They held the ball a little bit longer than the Jets did in time of possession. In third down, they were, this is unbelievable, guys. The Eagles converted 50% of their third downs. You know how many the Jets converted? The Jets converted 18%. They were 2 of 11.
Still
Right?
bad.
This is the what's the word I'm looking for? That model game that shows you how devastating turnovers are, because
Huge.
they basically kicked their ass in every other facet of the game,
know.
but they couldn't handle the ball. It reminds me of the
Strange
Washington game last year. Washington,
a little bit. Yeah,
3.8 per carry. They didn't do anything that great. It's just the Eagles turned the ball over.
I want to know your guys' thoughts and how you thought. I'm not going to try to point fingers at this guy, but how do you think Brian Johnson called the game today? I mean, I know there's a lot of players. You got drops. Obviously they're getting pressure. Do you guys think he did a serviceable job there? Or do you think maybe he could clean some things up?
I would say we saw this last year actually a little bit with Steichen. He was obviously terrific. You want to see more of the intermediate over the middle pass game. Yes, Devontae Smith dropped a wide open, well-designed play over the middle, but overall, they're so vertically. They just believe that verticality is the way that they win, even with all the zone defense that the Jets played. They were like, we're going after these guys deep. We're going after these guys deep. They took so many shots downfield.
Mm-hmm.
I want Goddard to be a bigger factor. Yes, he had the bad drop that turned into a pick, but that's the one thing that we don't see. And the red zone, they still, even though they scored, what was that, a 19-play drive where they barely scored? Was it 19?
What do you mean by barely scored?
We know, no. I mean, basically,
when Jalen got his hand over the goal line by
yes, that was the opening drive. 19
they barely. I mean, it was 19 plays. I think it was 19 plays.
Yeah. And by the way, that I don't know what they used. I really thought his knee was down. I was a little surprised that they overturned it, called it a touchdown. But they have different angles that they can see. But from what I was watching on the replay, it looked like his right knee was down before the ball crossed. But obviously they made that rule. They made the overturn for a reason, so they must have seen it better than I did. But to your point, yes, that wasn't like, was that 4th down, Adam? I think that they would have had more opportunities again, even if he didn't. I thought they ran the ball a little better in the red zone than they have, because Jalen Hurts is running the ball a little bit more. And I did like pony package. We saw a lot of Boston
awesome.
Scott and a running back. So I do think Brian Johnson switched it up, did some things. I just think that when, in the second half, when Jalen Hurts had to drop back, he was under a little bit too much duress. And, should they have protected him more? Should they have stuck a few tight ends next to Jack Driscoll? Maybe you can make the argument for that.
Yeah.
It was 4th and 3. So yeah. So
that's right. You're right. Yeah.
And their last 7 drives, man: fumble, punt, interception, missed field goals, interception, turnover on down, and the team's missing its top 3 cornerbacks. So for me, I'm like, what is going on here? Obviously, you know how big Lane is to this team, but you would think with just the playmakers that they have, with Jalen Hurts, as mobile and as good as the pocket awareness as he have, that they would be able to make up for that against this team that is missing these cornerbacks. But it kind of goes to show you how much a defensive line can just change a game. I mean, you think back to all the years, the big upset. You go back to the Patriots, undefeated in the Super Bowl. How are the Giants able? You're getting pressure on the best quarterback in history, and the pressure is the great equalizer. It changes things.
That you're absolutely right. And to your point, obviously this game turns when Jalen Hurts gets, well, and I say turns, this is when I really started to feel like, okay, the Eagles might lose this game. And that's when in the fourth quarter, Hurts got hit on the arm by Jermaine Johnson. His pass kind of floated up and Bryce Huff picks it off. Now, again, that's why I said I don't really put any of the turnovers on Jalen until the last one. He got hit because Jack Driscoll basically couldn't block. I mean, he got bull rushed by Jermaine Johnson there. Now, Clay, is that, as someone who plays alongside a quarterback, is it on the quarterback to get that ball out sooner? I mean, he's got to let the route develop also.
You got to be cognizant when you got Lane Johnson there, it's a different type of comfortability. You don't have to really pay as much attention to certain parts of the game. It's just so give and take. You got to know the situation. Obviously, you can sense when there's a blitz, and typically if there's not a blitz, Lane Johnson is locking down that side, but you got to know he's out. Pressure is going to be coming. You can't just sit back there like if there's not a blitz and know that you're going to be safe for the most part. Lane and even Mailata for most of the time is really good. So that's something you got to put on the quarterback. They're the head of the show. You got to know, you got to have that internal clock, and it's always changing and evolving depending on the situation, depending on the blitz, depending on the look, depending on the route concept, who's in, who's out. So that's something as a quarterback you always got to know.
Yeah, that's true. And you got to give the Jets credit for hanging in there. There were some back-breaking plays that the Eagles made. You go to the first quarter where Jalen Hurts looks like he's being dragged down by Michael Carter and somehow still makes a throw along the right sideline for a big first down. You look at the A.J. Brown catch deep down the left sideline that was reviewed and turned out to be a catch. There were so many opportunities that the Eagles had, right, to just bury the knife in the Jets, and they fought back. And maybe to your point, Clay, that's sort of a reflection of Robert Saleh. So it's going to happen. You can't be perfect forever. So first time the Eagles lose to the Jets there, and it's going to happen like that. Right. All right, so let's transition. We'll talk about this Eagles defense because, Adam, I agree with you. If the last 2 minutes of the game go differently, right? If Jalen Hurts doesn't throw that interception and it doesn't set up a pretty easy touchdown for the Jets, who I almost thought scored too early. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, they sure did. They got lucky.
The Jets, the Jets had a real rough time blocking that Eagles defensive front. And credit Milton Williams, right, who's had a really good year, Adam, of coming back from an injury and just being really dominant up front.
In game, he got hurt. He got lost the game. Blankenship hurt his ribs again. He got blindsided. The penalty was called, but unfortunately he couldn't come back. They only dressed 2 safeties for the game. Now, you noticed Mekhi Garner playing safety, Jeff?
Yeah, he had to, because when Blankenship went out, they only had Terrell Edmonds as safety. So I saw the 43 roaming around, and now they played a lot less of the same coverages. I think we'll see with the All-22 than normal because Garner was making his first, he's an undrafted rookie getting in there. But he was, that is the number I saw in there, because when Blankenship went out, he had to play safety, and then Roby got hurt, so they needed a new nickel. And Ricks was already out, if I'm not mistaken, so they had to go with Goodrich to play the slot. But that's why the defensive line stood to be the hero, because they were making that almost irrelevant the way they were getting at Zach Wilson.
They kept him in the game, and Wilson certainly helped him. But the effort of Reddick was phenomenal. Since he got that cast off his right hand, this is his best game of the year. He was relentless, and Sweaty was terrific. I'm so glad we talked about him in the pregame show. He's such a good football player.
Yep, Reddick.
I mean, there's not much else you could say. The defense brought it. It's not their fault that the offense put them in a bad way. I mean, they did all that they could. They really did. They're shorthanded. They got all sorts of injuries on the back end. They're going to have to do something at safety. They need to start working guys out, and they also need to look at potential trade here. I know people talk about Jeremy Chin, but Chin was more or less benched with Carolina. The reason why he's playing is because they're down to their starting safeties. Yes, we reported 2 days after the draft that was the guy they were going to draft 4 years ago if they didn't get Hurts. It's definitely true. But, man, that was 4 years ago.
Right.
the Panthers are not extending Chin's contract. I'm sure he's available, but they have to look deep, and obviously the Panthers are going to get calls on him and other players, but they've got to find him at least one safety, if not two. Quite frankly, at this point, they're really down a bunch of players at that position.
So Clay, you're fairly familiar with Jeremy Chin. You know, I don't know if you've. I mean, he's been playing for the Panthers. I know you do a lot of Bears and Jaguar stuff. Have you seen his body work much? I think we got you muted. Clay, I think you're muted.
This thing has a mind of its own sometimes.
Okay.
Jeremy Chin, big safety, 6'3", 220 pounds. Right. I mean, he played football in a great conference at Southern Illinois University, which is a part of the Missouri Valley Football Conference. So I'm familiar, of course. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you feel like his skill set matches a Fangio defense as a safety / nickel.
Well, they're playing it, just so you know. They're playing it in Carolina.
Right, but they're also not extending him. So I'm wondering if they feel that it's because he doesn't necessarily fit.
Well, he lost his job last year, to be honest with you. He's been in regression. It's not nothing.
Right. Gotcha.
Well, he doesn't have a ton of interceptions. I mean, he hits the ball. I mean, he's a long, big, strong guy, but I mean, just off of sheer size, he's not going to be a great slot defender. He's too big to keep up with some of these slot guys. So if you're looking for him to be a guy that's going to be versatile and be able to move the slot, obviously I haven't studied him a lot. I know Greg Cosell have a nice scouting report on him, but from what I've seen, I just don't think he would be a good versatile player that could come in and just be really good in the slot, just because he's such a big dude. Okay, you just can't physically change direction the same way somebody that's a little leaner, a little lankier, maybe 30 pounds lighter, the 190-pound safety that can kind of do both things can.
Right. All right. Okay. So yeah, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about that, and I'm sure you and Greg might chop it up on that later this week when you do Inside the Tape with Clay Harbor and Greg Cosell on Inside the Birds platform. You look at the Jets, their offense, and I thought that, I don't want to say they came out with their bullets flying early, but they were clearly running kind of a one-read system there, Clay, early on, and they were trying to get the ball out of Zach Wilson's hands really quickly, and it worked. And eventually, though, the defense catches up to that, and when you get the third down, you got to be able to make more than just a one-read or a three-step drop, and that's where, again, they really struggled on third down. You look at their possessions, it's punt, field goal, turnover on downs, field goal, punt, field goal, punt. They literally were just, I mean, that interception that Jalen Hurts threw was the worst timed and worst decision of the entire game, because you gave the Jets the ball so far into your own right,
they're not going to score.
It's almost like they couldn't help but score. Yeah.
I mean, you almost feel bad for Saleh just because he's working with Zach Wilson here, and he thought he had Aaron Rodgers coming to the season. This is one of the games. I looked at the Eagles' schedule. I circled it. I go, damn, this is going to be a tough game, but not with Zach Wilson playing quarterback. I think Zach Wilson versus Jalen Hurts, this is a game the Eagles have to win. I don't care, what happens as far as injuries. Zach Wilson, Jalen Hurts, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Zach Wilson, arguably bottom, 3, 4, maybe the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. You can't lose to that guy, and that's the guy who you lost to. Obviously, the defense played well, but just to piggyback off of you guys, I thought Sean Desai had a heck of a game, and if he keeps playing, coaching like this, I think he might be a guy that gets some looks at the end of the season for a head coaching job. But I really like the game plan he came in. Obviously, he's going against the New York Jets, but Zach Wilson is just not going to be able to do the things a lot of quarterbacks are, especially with the Eagles defense getting some pressure on him. Obviously, I thought he did a decent job getting the ball to Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall, they were using him a lot in the run game and the pass game, so he's a weapon there. But I just don't think they're going to be consistent on offense. And if they want to do anything like 3-3, get to the postseason, do all that stuff, this defense better score a lot more touchdowns like they did tonight.
Yeah, I tell you, to your point, that I thought that we use the term chargering, and sometimes we use the term jetsing, and only the Jets could get a free play from a defense jumping off sides, complete a pass and still somehow get a roughness penalty that backs them up from where they originally were on a free play. It was a free play, and they still got penalized 15 yards and moved back.
That was crazy. I thought it was going to be offsetting penalties, but then, you get the BG jumps off sides. Okay, they do a nice play. Then Alan Lazard with the blinds. I don't like that rule, first of all. But, I mean, it helped us out today, even though it didn't matter in the long run. But that blindside block rule, I mean, he didn't really take his head off. He didn't go low. He hit him in the chest. Like, if he went for his head or he goes for his knees, okay, but what are you supposed to do? It's football. That happens, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Call me old school.
You're old. I'll just call you old. Well, the result of that play, though, for the Eagles was that Reed Blankenship got hurt, right? And then he had to come out, and that's just
he couldn't protect himself. The rule is you have to be able to protect yourself. He didn't have a chance to protect himself. That's the rule, and that's a shame because who the heck knows how bad the ribs are. They're in dire straits at safety. I mean, I hate to keep saying it, but it's the truth, and that to me is the most important thing right now. Well, actually, that is
nickel
one safety.
Yeah.
What's that?
And nickel too, with Roby
Just going to mention
getting
that.
hurt.
Yeah. Number 2 with Roby. They're in a tough way, man. This is we don't know that he was never. I don't think he was downgraded out with the shoulder, but he never came back.
Right.
So they got problems, man. And look who they play next week. A team that rolled up 42 points in the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, and by the way, you made a really great point. I think that I don't want to gloss it over. It was a very almost arrogant risk by the Eagles to go into this game with just 2 safeties active. They did not elevate Tristan McCullum from the practice squad. They did elevate Garner, so they did wind up playing him in that spot. But either way, I mean, even having just 3 safeties is kind of a roll of the dice, as you saw in a game like this. So it didn't, I can't say that's the thing that came back to hurt them. Clearly the interception and the touchdown they allowed did, but man, that was a real risk. And when you're playing the Dolphins next week, you can't make that kind of risk in your defensive backfield, right? You can't be shorthanded. You need to have all hands on deck.
That's the point. Like right now, they have 1 safety on their practice squad. Tristan McCullum, you just mentioned. He's been
There's one name I do like out there still.
Who's that?
Logan Ryan. I don't know if you guys remember Logan Ryan.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah. Really
Former
good player.
Teammate of mine. The guy can play. He still wants to play. And he's a veteran. Yeah, he's still out there. He's still a free agent. He still wants to play. So Logan Ryan's a guy that I think the Eagles should look at. He's smaller safety, but he's a guy that's a veteran and he could be a Band-Aid for a while if you really need someone to, plug in right now that's played in a ton of different systems. Professional guy that can get the job done, you can trust is a name that, you could maybe look at out there.
Jeff, there's your Corey Graham. Remember, we said that all week. The Eagles need someone like Corey Graham, just like Logan Ryan, a guy near the end of his career that's willing to come in, put him on the practice squad for a week or 2, or in the case of Roby for maybe 2 days, and then move him up. But that's a great name, Clay. Yeah, in fact, you're just reading about him now. Yeah, he clearly wants to play. And a high-character guy. He's won a lot of games in this league, started a lot of games, played corners, played safety. That's a great one, man. He's probably one of the best guys out there.
For some reason, I thought he was with the was he with the Bucks? I thought he was actually
recently last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that would be funny because we would call him a Band-Aid, but he'd literally be a Band-Aid for an already used Band-Aid, which was Bradley Roby. So I don't know. Maybe it's a tourniquet at this point. I don't know what you would call it.
They need somebody, man.
There's bleeding going on, and they got to stop it. Yeah,
but he's a guy that can play slot. And obviously I played with him a long time ago. But he's a guy that could guard a tight end. He could guard a slot defender. He's one of those guys that Bill Belichick, like I played with him on the Patriots, just because he could do so many different things. And he was a player, obviously, that's many years ago, but still watching him, I know mentally he has the smarts and the intelligence to do a ton of different things on a defense. He's a fast learner. He was a captain. He's a guy that people look to. Like, he's the type of guy that if your team that's in the hunt, you need a veteran guy, bring this guy in, put him on the practice squad, see what kind of juice he's got left. Is he still moving around? He can learn the system fast. Give it a go.
Yeah. No,
text Howie, will you? Clay, text him.
I'll text him. Text him right now. Hey, Howie.
Maybe I'll have to reach out to our friend Joselio Hansen. I haven't talked to him in a while.
Joselio. Yeah, he could play slot. He could play slot.
He was good.
He could play the slot. Absolutely. All right, I got a question for you guys about this next game upcoming and some of the injuries. But before we do that, we're going to tell you to make sure you check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's also pause to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds Postgame Live. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, joined, of course, by former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. So, fellas, we were talking about it a little bit, but let's turn the page and face reality. The Miami Dolphins are the next team, and they are a video game right now. They have lost, but when they win, they go berserk. And the Eagles are hurting right now in two rough areas, in the secondary and on the offensive line. Adam, when looking at this matchup, what is concerning you more right now? Would it be the way the Eagles turn the ball over, or the mess that they've got going on in defensive backfield?
I would say the latter, the mess that they have going on in the backfield. Eagles have a terrific run defense. I know Raheem Mostert's been incredible. I think he's got 10 touchdowns now. He's been great. Achane's hurt. I don't really worry too much about the Dolphins' run game. It's can they somehow disrupt Tua Tagovailoa's timing? Because no one seems to be able to do that. That's the thing. You want to make him hold on to the ball a little bit. That's when he struggles. No one's doing it yet. The Eagles have the front to do that. The Dolphins don't have a great offensive line. But the thing is, if he gets time, they're gonna get killed on crossers. They're the kings of the crossing routes, man. Bang 8, post routes. That's what they do. And the problem is, Geoff, as you set that up, the Eagles are so beat up on the back end. I don't know who's going to line up at safety next week, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, that's a big question. And Clay, I would love to tell you that the 42 points that the Miami Dolphins scored against the Panthers in a 42-21 win was their highest scoring effort of the season. But they put a 70 burger on the Denver Broncos. Who does that?
That's tough, man. And this is going to have to be a shootout. I mean, obviously, I hope some of these defensive players, we hope that these guys, hopefully Slays and Bradbury can come back. Roby's not hurt too bad. Hopefully, Jalen Carter will get better here. And, Justin Evans and IR, so he's out, Tupelotu, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with this defense. In my opinion, this is one of those games. Brian Johnson, you go with the Eagles, it's going to be a shootout, man. You know what you're getting with this team. Tua is unless you can get some really good pressure on Tua. I mean, he plays at a high level. When he's healthy, Tua can play, and he's done it consistently this year against some. I mean, he's had some easier defenses to play. Obviously, the Eagles can stop the run, and the Dolphins have been better at the run this year than they have in the past. Instead of just being a passing team, they do both. They run and throw the ball. Obviously, you said Achane's out, the explosive Achane, but they still got Mosher. Okay, Tyreek Hill, this guy can play. Jalen Waddle, this guy can play. I mean, they're the greatest show on the field right now. It's going to be a shootout, but they give up points too. Adam Thielen had over 100, like 150. I was playing against him in fantasy football. I look, see Adam Thielen with like over 115 yards and a touchdown. The Dolphins are giving that up to Thielen. What are they going to do to A.J. Brown? So I think you can take advantage of this Dolphins defense. But you got to realize, like, hey, you're going to have to put up some points this game. So I think, Devontae's going to have to come back and have a big game. AJ is going to have to be AJ. Swift is going to have to be Swift. And it's going to be a tough game. But I think the Eagles can still pull it off.
Yeah. In fact, of all the injuries, though, I do think the Lane Johnson one is the guy that I think needs to come back most. Because no matter who comes back for the secondary, the Eagles are going to give up points. I mean, Miami is just going to score points. That's just the way it is. The Eagles, like you said, both of you guys said, are probably going to need to win a shootout. And in order to do that, the quarterback's got to be protected. So to me, Lane Johnson actually becomes more important
Bradley
than
Chubb,
or 2 or 3 players that might come back in the secondary. So we'll look this week and see who's going to come back. We'll have it all covered on Inside the Birds and all of our shows on the Inside the Birds platform. But this is going to be, I think, guys, one of the more fascinating weeks for the fans and just for interest, because let's face it, the Eagles had been rolling along like a bus. I mean, each game we went into, I think all of our predictions for not only this Jets game, but even past games have been Eagles by 8, Eagles by 10, Eagles by 12. This might be the first time in a long time that the Eagles aren't even favored. So this is going to be a very, very intriguing week for Eagles and their.
Oh, they're not favored next week?
I don't know what the early line is.
Oh yeah, wow, that'd be shocker. I'd be shocked if they're not favored, but it may not be by very much, quite frankly, the way that Miami's put up points.
So you think the Eagles should be favored in this game?
I would have them. Me personally, 1 or 1.5.
Okay.
Look there. I mean,
even with this defensive backfield.
Well, no, but the thing is, we don't know who's going to be available, though. That's the thing.
Right.
And Miami, I think they're. By the way, Tyreek Hill had cramps. That's what it looked like, a hamstring, but wound up being cramps. Thankfully for them, not for the Eagles, of course. But we'll find out the injuries obviously tomorrow, and we'll have more on Inside the Birds this week. And this is going to be because people are fired up. They want the coaching staff fired. They want Brian Johnson reassigned. So, it never ends. Wait, Jeff, what do you always say? What is that line you have? Everyone.
Well, it's at the year. Nobody hires and fires more assistant coaches and personnel than the Eagles, even when they make the playoffs.
No, but the fans, they want everyone fired.
Right.
When they lose.
Fire everybody. No, but it is, listen, this is a big stretch here, because not only is it the Miami Dolphins, but Washington got a win. They're looking a little better, so they'll be up next. And then that murderer's row that they have of, I forget the order, but it's something like San Francisco, Buffalo, Kansas City. That's 3 right there.
Yeah.
And Dallas, of course. It's going to be, as we like to say, that's when the fun begins next week. Miami Dolphins. All right. It's been a great show. I want to thank my bookie, of course. I want to thank Sky Motor Cars, PHL Sports Nation. Next week's game is a night game, correct?
Correct. 8:20.
Right,
so we'll be in 5 to 7, right? Hopefully.
All right. So we'll have more information as we get later in the week on the starting time for Inside the Birds pregame live. And of course, postgame live will be directly after with the 3 people who have been doing this show. Thanks everybody for watching. For Adam Caplan, former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor, I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Birds postgame live.